When you stop explaining yourself, something quiet but powerful begins to happen inside you. Because most people don't realize that constant explanation is not clarity, it is fear dressed as communication. Fear of being misunderstood, fear of being rejected, fear of losing connection. And Stoic philosophy teaches us that the moment you hand over your peace to other people's understanding, you surrender your freedom. Because not everyone is capable of seeing you clearly. And that is not your failure, it is simply reality. A reality Marcus Aurelius understood deeply when he wrote that people act according to their own minds, not your intentions. And once you accept this, you stop wasting your energy trying to convince those who have already decided who you are. Because explaining yourself to the wrong people does not build respect, it slowly erodes it. Especially in relationships, where over-explaining often turns love into negotiation and connection into justification. And this is where Stoicism draws a firm line, teaching that dignity begins where unnecessary explanation ends. Because the Stoic does not speak to be liked, does not clarify to be validated, and does not defend to be accepted. The Stoic speaks only when truth requires it, and remains silent when ego demands reaction. And this silence is not weakness, it is restraint, it is self-command, it is the calm of someone who knows that their worth does not fluctuate with opinions. Because the more you explain yourself, the more you teach people that they are entitled to your inner world, and not everyone deserves that access. Especially those who listen only to respond, only to judge, only to extract control. And when you stop explaining, relationships begin to reveal their true nature, because silence acts like a mirror, reflecting who is truly with you and who was only comfortable when you were small, compliant, and predictable. And this is why some people grow uneasy when you become quiet, because they were never connected to your essence, only to your reactions. And Stoicism prepares you for this moment by reminding you that attachment to outcomes is suffering, that emotional detachment does not mean emotional coldness, but emotional mastery, knowing which feelings belong to you and which belong to others, knowing that someone else's confusion, anger, or disappointment is not your responsibility to fix. Because the Stoic understands that control lies only in perception, choice, and action, not in how others interpret you. And in modern relationships, this wisdom is more relevant than ever, because we live in an age of instant responses, constant availability, and emotional overexposure, where silence is often mistaken for arrogance and boundaries are labeled as cruelty. But Stoicism reframes this completely, teaching that boundaries are not walls, they are filters, protecting your energy from being drained by endless explanations that lead nowhere. Because respect is not built through justification, it is built through consistency. And when you stop explaining yourself, people either rise to meet you with understanding or fall away under the weight of their own expectations. And both outcomes serve your peace. Because the Stoic does not chase harmony at the cost of self-betrayal. And this is where silence becomes a declaration, a wordless statement that says, I know who I am. I do not need to argue my existence. I do not need to convince you of my intentions, and I will not shrink myself to fit your comfort. And at first, this shift feels uncomfortable, because you are breaking an old habit of over-giving, over-justifying, over-proving. But over time, something changes. Your breath slows, your mind clears, and you realize how much energy you were leaking into conversations that were never meant to understand you. And this realization brings a quiet strength, the kind that does not announce itself, but is felt, and people sense it. Because when you stop explaining, others start explaining themselves to you. Because the power dynamic changes. No longer are you reacting, you are observing. No longer are you defending, you are discerning. And this is the Stoic advantage, the ability to remain centered while others spin, calm while others provoke, grounded while others seek control. And through this calm, you begin to see clearly which relationships are rooted in respect and which were dependent on your compliance. Because true connection does not require constant clarification, it requires presence. And those who truly value you will not demand endless explanations. They will feel your sincerity without interrogation. while those who thrived on your emotional labor will grow restless, impatient, and eventually leave. And Stoicism teaches us not to mourn these exits, because not every departure is a loss. Some are liberation. And this is where self-respect deepens. Because self-respect is not loud, it does not argue, it does not beg to be understood. It stands quietly and lets reality speak. And when you embody this, people treat you differently, not because you became harsh, but because you became whole. And the world responds to wholeness with caution, because a person who does not explain themselves unnecessarily cannot be easily manipulated, cannot be easily pulled into emotional chaos, cannot be easily controlled. And this is why Stoic silence feels intimidating to some, because it removes their leverage. And yet, this silence is not about punishment, it is about alignment. Alignment with your values, your limits, your inner compass. And as you align, your relationships recalibrate. Some deepen, some dissolve, but all become honest. And honesty is the foundation of peace. And as Marcus Aurelius advised, spend less time arguing about what a good person should be and simply be one. Because when you live in integrity, your actions speak louder than any explanation ever could. And this is the final transformation, when you realize that the need to explain was never about communication, it was about insecurity. And once insecurity loosens its grip, explanation loses its urgency. And in its place grows confidence, not the loud kind, but the grounded kind, the kind that rests in silence, the kind that knows that being misunderstood by the wrong people is a small price to pay for being at peace with yourself. And when this understanding settles in, you stop fighting every misconception, stop correcting every assumption, stop chasing validation, and you begin to live, truly live, with clarity, restraint, and dignity. And this is when everything changes, not because the world suddenly understands you, but because you no longer need it to.